Good day, and welcome to the Jeff Casillo program. Today is Monday, January 20th, a very historical day. This is Martin Luther King Day, in observance of Martin Luther King, and also our 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. I don't know if any of you have had a chance of listening to President Trump, but I think you would be enthusiastic if you heard his speeches. It's my desire and hope that he's a man of his word, and he says what he does, and he does what he says. Unfortunately, in the past, we've had too many leaders that have said a lot and done very little. And if you have been following me on understandinggodslaws.com, you will find that I have spoken about that in various lessons. God always entrusts us leaders, and that's what's going to be the lesson for today, the entrustment of leaders, whether they be male or female. And we're going to enlighten on a judge that is a female. Her name was Deborah, and I think you're going to find this very interesting. But before we get into that, let's get a little bit of humor. Do you remember when HMOs came out? Now, this came about Medical Insurance Explained. It was a funny email that was received from Hardy Martin. He's a member of a church, and this is what he sent out. What does HMO stand for? His answer? This is actually a variation of the phrase, "Hey Mo." Its roots go back to a concept pioneered by Mo of the Three Stooges, who discovered that a patient could be made to forget the pain in his foot if he was poked hard enough in the eye. Next question that came up was, I just joined an HMO. How difficult will it be to choose the doctor I want? Answer, well, only slightly more difficult than choosing your parents. Your insurer will provide you with a book. The doctors basically fall into two categories. First, those who are no longer accepting new patients, and second, those who will see you but are no longer participating in the plan. But don't worry, the remaining doctor who is still in the plan and accepting new patients has an office. It's only half a day's drive away and a diploma from a third world country. Do all diagnostic procedures require pre-certification? Answer, no. Only those that you need. Can I get coverage for my pre-existing conditions? Certainly, as long as they don't require any treatment. What happens if I want to try alternative forms of medicine? You'll need to have alternative forms of payment. My pharmacy plan only covers generic drugs, but I need the name brand. I tried the generic, but it gave me a stomach ache. What should I do? Do as what Mo did. Poke yourself in the eye. What if I'm away from home and I get sick? Well, you really shouldn't do that. I think I need to see a specialist, but my doctor insists he can handle the problem. Can a general practitioner really perform a heart transplant right in his or her own office? Hard to say, but considering that all you're risking is the $20 copayments, there's no harm in giving it a shot. And finally, will healthcare be different in the next decade? No. But if you call right now, you might get an appointment by then. Oh, such great humor and a lot to say. I bet each of you listening out here would scratch your head and go, now I could tell you a few stories about the doctor's office, about people, the doctors I thought, being a long-standing patient, I could get an appointment when I really needed one, and I was told, wait. Well, by that time, you could be dead. Sad state of affairs. I don't know of an answer. Maybe you do. But it's sad to say that if you get sick, you're in a world of hurt. And you have to see a specialist for this and a specialist for that, and one for this and one for that, and it's like you just scratch your head. And if you've got multiple problems, you got to go see multiple specialists. And by seeing them, only God knows when you'll be able to get in to see them all. So anyway, not trying to be a rant, but it's better to call a spade. And in today's society, we need good doctors. We need good nurses. And most of all, we need to pray for them. Unfortunately, a lot of the good doctors that we have are leaving because of all the restrictions that are being applied upon them. The same way with nurses. It's like the man that goes to the car place and tries to tell the mechanic on how to fix the car. I tried that once when I was 18 years old, and I got a very rude awakening. So I don't try to tell a mechanic how to fix my car. I don't try to tell the doctor how to fix my heart. But it's my prayer, my deepest prayer, that he knows how to do these things. And I think that, unfortunately, that many doctors in today's society, their hands are tied by, I don't know whether it's the government, the pharmaceuticals, or the insurance companies. But I can tell you this much, as much amount of money that we have and we pay out to the insurance companies is absolutely amazing. And if you were to ask me, are you getting a return on your investment? I would honestly have to say no. Because the word deny comes into play too many times. And too many men and women that go into surgery are ushered out because they're told by insurance companies that that's the maximum that they will pay before they're released. And I've heard a lot of horror stories, That's not right. There's nothing right about that. But anyway, let's turn to Judges. Now, if you've been following me, I'm in the book of Judges right now. I sit down and read a chapter in the Bible every day. I get my spiritual medicine that way, my spiritual food, if you want to call it. And I came across this lady by the name of Deborah. But let me set the stage. If you go to Judges, the book of Judges, that's exactly who they are. By the time that the Israelites had come out of Egypt and were on their way into the promised land, Israel, the folks that had brought them out of there had pretty much died. And that included Moses, that including Joshua. And the Israelite people were stiff-necked. If you go back to Joshua 2, Joshua 3, you will see that the Israelites are no different than our people today. They have fallen into the cycle of false gods, of sinning, of worshiping idols. And then when they got in trouble, what happened? They cried out to God. And they said, God, help us. And they found out that the tribes, and there are six total, that God says, that are going to give them a bad time. Now, this is what Joshua 3 says. Now, these are the nations the Lord left to test. And don't think that it's not being tested today. All those Israelites who had not experienced any of the wars in Canaan. He did this only to teach warfare to the descendants of the Israelites who had not previously had battle experience. The 5 rulers of the Philistines, the Canaanites, the Sidonians, the Hivites, who were living in the Lebanon mountains from Mount Baal, Hermon, to Lebal, Hamath. They were left to test the Israelites to see whether they would obey the Lord's commands, which he had given their forefathers through Moses. The Israelites lived among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now think about this. Israel today in the Gaza. If you look up those 6 particular tribes, you will be very, very interested to see who lives in Israel and who has been a thorn in the side of Israel. But the Israelites did not listen to God. Now, many of these tribes, if you'll notice, are of the Muslim religion. The Muslim religion is a false religion. They are false gods. The Hindu religion is a false religion. They are false gods. There's no way around this. And God said, his very first commandment, I'm a jealous God. You will have no other gods before me. But yet the Israelites allowed this to happen. And the Israelites took their daughters in marriage and gave their own daughters to their sons and served their gods. You see, in verse 7, this sums it up. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel, so that he sold them into the hands of the Cushan Ristathaim, king of Aram Naharaim, to whom the Israelites were subject for 8 years. 8 years. Look at Israel today. And I dare you to look up these tribes and see exactly where they came from, where their derivatives are. And you will see exactly where they are today in the land of Israel, that surround Israel. And you will see their evil. But again, the Israel people sinned, worshipped idols, gave their daughters to those And God, in return, had to punish them. Is God doing no different today? So now we're fast forward, and the Israelite people are crying out for help, and they need someone to help them. And like a child who cries out for his father when he's in deep water, they begin calling for God. And God provides to the Israelite people a judge. A judge. What happens? They were rescued by a judge who was sent from God, and they began obeying God for a while. But like all things, we all backslide, and they backslid into idolatry. And what happens? They were conquered by Syria, Moab, Canaan, Midian, Ammon, and Philistia. They were even faced with the threat of a civil war. Just as God had sent help to the people when they cried out to Him, He will deliver us when we call on Him. So the first period, we have Othniel, then we have Ehud, and then after Ehud, again as you fast forward, we have Deborah, a female. Now, accordingly to what I have, and the commentary is on Deborah, according to the NIV, Deborah was fourth and the only female judge of Israel. God uses individuals, male and female, for His glory. Deborah was a wise woman. What made her wise? She was a mediator, an advisor, and a counselor. And you see, when God called upon her to lead, she did three wonderful things. She planned, she directed, and she delegated. You're going to find that Deborah stood in, said what she did, and did what she said. She was a writer of songs, and she was known for her prophetic power. Where was she in Canaan? She was a prophetess and a judge. It says in here, and this is the thing in chapter 4 that stands out to me. Barak, and if you want to know who Barak was the son of Abinoam from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, and Barak was from what I understand, the leader of the Israelites, the leader of the army. The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali, or Naphtali, and Zebulun, and lead the way to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots, and he had 600 iron chariots and his troops. Barak said to her, "If you go with me, I will go, but if you don't, I won't go." Now, Deborah could have said no, but under God's leadership, in his way, Deborah took charge. Deborah told Barak that God would be with him in this battle. So it says here, "Very well, I will go with you, but because of the way you are going about this, the honor will not be yours." That's what you told Barak. You're not going to take the credit for this. "For the Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman." Sisera being the bad guy. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh, where he summoned Zebulun and Naphtali. 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah also went with him. The rest of the story is that Sisera, the evil one, was running for his life. He and, 900 chariots. And these were iron chariots, and the men with him. What a woman Deborah is. And Deborah laid everything out to Barak as to what was going to happen. And she not only led him out with that, but she told him how to fight, how God was going to be with him, and that a woman was going to kill Sisera. Now, just to tell you real quick, Sisera was a bad man and evil in God's eyes. And this is what happened to Sisera. He fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because they were friendly relations between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the clan of Heber the Kenite. Now you go, okay, well, who's this? Who are these folks? And it's interesting. Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zananimim near Kadesh. That's verse 11. Now when they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera gathered together his 900 iron chariots and his men with him to the Kishon River. So now Sisera flees on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Jael went to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." This is in verse 18 of Judges chapter 4. Sisera said he was thirsty. Jael gave him milk. Sisera said, "Stand in the door of the tent. So if somebody comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. "Come, I will show you the man you're looking for." So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with a tent peg through his temple, dead. On that day, God subdued Jabin, the Canaanite king before the Israelites. And the hand of Israelites grew stronger and stronger against Jabin, the Canaanite king, until they destroyed him. Verse 23 and 24 say. Deborah? Where's Deborah in all this? Well, chapter 5 sums it up. Deborah was also a writer of songs. And on that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang this song. And as you read this, is it any different than our choirs today, singing the praises of our Lord? You see, God lifts up people in many different ways for his glory. As the NIV testimony says, Deborah was not power hungry. She wanted to serve God. Whenever praise came her way, who'd she give the credit to? Barak? No. God. She didn't deny or resist her position in the culture as a woman and as a wife. But she never allowed it to be hindered either. Her story shows that God can accomplish great things through people who are willing to be led by God. We hear so much of all the prophets, the judges, the great men, the disciples, all men. But you see, God also created the woman for his glory, the same way he created man. And this is what I want to show you, that it can be said this way, that Deborah's story shows that God can accomplish great things through people who are willing to be led by him. Deborah's life challenges us in several ways. She reminds us of the need to be available both to God and to others. She encourages us to spend our efforts on what we can do rather than worrying about what we can't do. She challenges us to be wise leaders. And she demonstrates what a person can accomplish when God is in control. Is anything impossible with God? One lady who directed the Israelite people to have rest. And if you look at my lesson before in understandinggodslaws.com, you will see I talk about rest. Rest is not only physically by the body, but rest also has to do with the land and the word peace in the land. Whether it's here in the United States, where we would love to have peace in the land and not crime, that would be the word rest. Here's a lady that brought rest to the Israelite people, and they lived in rest. I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this lesson on Deborah. And it's nice to give the men all the credit through the Bible, but it's also nice to hear about the women of the Bible and all that they have done and how God uses either sex for his glory. I think that as we read the Bible further, we see how God actually or maybe I should say, how one can demonstrate what one can accomplish when God is in control. I think that's the better saying. When you give it to God, actually give it to him 100%. What is the outcome? What do you accomplish? And in the end, the credit all goes to God and not you and I. God creates humbleness in us. And Deborah demonstrated one thing that I can say that evidently Solomon must have been reading about, was wisdom. God gave Deborah the wisdom to lead the Israelite people. Think about it and enjoy this, because our God is the most loving God of all. And as I reach you, it's my hope and prayer that each of us starts each day with a prayer to God and ends each day with a prayer to God, to give him the thanks for all the blessings that he's given us. In the future, I'm going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump, and I believe that there may be some similarities between Mr. Trump and what God has spared his life for a reason. There are other lessons that I'm going to get into that I'm excited about, and I will share those in the very near future. I welcome your thoughts, and I certainly hope that you've enjoyed what I've had to say. And I say, may God bless you in all you do, and may you God bless in all that he does. Please go to my website, understandinggodslaws.com. And if you have a comment, as long as it's constructive, I'll take all the comments I can get. And I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.